And we are live once again. Good morning, everybody. Today is Thursday, May 7th, 2020, and welcome back to our Facebook page. My name is Michael Quedal, Digital Marketing Specialist for the New Jersey School Boards Association. Once again, coming at you live to the power of Cisco WebEx, trying our best to flatten the curve and always practice social distancing. NGSBA has been hosting Facebook Live events to address questions from boards, school administrators, and educators throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. If you want a replay of any previous broadcast, click the videos tab on the left-hand side of the screen of our Facebook page. That has all of our previous broadcasts, and there's also a live section. So if you're looking for the live videos as well, you can find that in the videos tab. And make sure you click that like button on our Facebook page so you can be notified when we do go live in the future. Quick note about the rest of the week. We have another Facebook Live session tomorrow, Wellness Series with Alicia DiLorenzo. She's back in her Friday at 1 p.m. Spot. We're going to take a break to explore mindfulness and social and emotional learning. We're also going to expand our knowledge on the positive impact social and emotional learning can have on the climate and culture of schools and communities. Today, we're going to be monitoring the comments section during and after the broadcast. So if you have a question or comment or just want to say hi, drop it in the comment section below, and I'll forward along to our experts. And then, whether you're a school board member, administrator, teacher, or even a parent, we are here to serve you and help you work through this difficult time. And again, I always say this every single Facebook Live broadcast. I hope everyone and their families are healthy and safe and okay. Today, we are back with a very special Facebook Live special event, legal update. We have a couple of our NGSBA attorneys, Kathleen Asher and Katrina Homel. We're going to be sharing frequently asked legal questions throughout the current crisis, and we're going to touch upon a few topics: labor and employment issues, employee leaves of absence. So stick around, and again, if you have any questions, just post in the comments section below, and I'll forward along to Kathleen and Katrina. So without further ado, welcome Kathleen and Katrina to the broadcast. How you doing?
Thanks so much, Mike. It's so good to be here, and thanks to everyone who's tuned in this morning as well. We look forward to having this time with you this morning.
Yeah, this is great. We really appreciate you having us.
Yeah, absolutely. We're so happy to have you, and it's so nice to see you guys again. Really. All right, so let's dive right into it. What's happening right now that some brand new news last week or this week, now that districts aren't opening again for in-person classes until the fall?
Well, Mike, I think this is definitely the question that's on everyone's mind. And to fill in our audience, earlier this week, the governor closed schools for the remainder of this school year. As many of you may know, private schools that have longer academic years would be closed through at least June 30th. So far, we know that the governor's administration has said it'll create a steering committee of different stakeholders in the education field to look at summer learning opportunities, recommendations about provision of remote services, and approaches for safe and efficient reopening once we're finally at that point. But a little plug for something that a new initiative NJSBA is undertaking. We've reached out to districts to hear from them about what issues they're thinking about currently, and also in thinking about reopening. And we are looking at releasing a white paper at some point in May that really addresses these issues as we're thinking about these things that there's so many issues that districts are really confronting and grappling with during this time of COVID-19.
Kathleen, did you want to add anything to that?
I did. I just wanted to make districts just make sure that they are aware of an important date that's coming up. There was a broadcast put out by the Department of Education at the end of last week, came up very quickly, but it does have to do with a plan that the districts are required to put forward to have by it's May 22nd. So it came up very quickly about exactly how they are going to see that end of the year through and how they are going to close schools. And that is something that has to be ultimately approved by their school board. But there is understanding that there might not be a board meeting between now and the 22nd. They are allowed to submit this plan, which gives every district the criteria that they absolutely have to deal with and to have a plan for, but lets them thereafter vote to accept it and then to submit it to the county executive superintendent. But that's a big date, and that's a big undertaking that came up pretty quickly for districts.
Yeah, so I guess mark your calendars, right? So thank you for that. All right, so let's see here. Are there any changes to renewal timelines for staff in the view of the current crisis?
So there has been an update in answer to your question, but just to fill in the audience again. So if we were in a typical kind of scenario, non-tenured teachers and paraprofessionals are required to receive a written offer of a contract for employment for the next year, or a notice that they would not be receiving that offer of employment by mid-May. And if there's no written notice provided, they're presumed to have then received an offer of continued employment. And then there's also a deadline in statute that they would have to accept that offer by June 1st. So that they would have to receive an offer by May 15th, and they'd have to accept it in writing by June 1st. Executive Order 105 actually pushed back these timelines for April election districts. And why was that? Because, excuse me, that Executive Order 105, I misspoke, actually pushed certain elections, including April school board elections, to May 12th. So Executive Order 105 changed the election timeline for those April election districts, which really then created some constraints for districts in making decisions about their budget in those April election districts. And of course, some of those decisions are heavily linked to staffing. So in early April, Executive Order 116 then really looked at the issue about how are districts going to make good decisions in this crunch timeline if you're one of those impacted districts. So in April election districts only, that May 15th deadline has been extended to June 5th. So again, that's that deadline to make an offer of employment or written notice that the employment is not going to be offered. And then the acceptance deadline has also been extended to later in June to June 22nd.
Kathleen?
No, I think Katrina hit all the salient points on that one.
Yeah. All right. So, Kathleen, are districts still engaging in negotiations with their employee unions right now?
Absolutely. Many districts are in full force. There's all kinds of reasons for that. Some have said to me, have talked to us anecdotally and said, oh, we finally have, without the students in the building, we can actually work on this a little bit. So they're trying to take advantage of a little bit of extra time to enter in negotiations. There is nothing legally or executive order wise has changed negotiations. It hasn't changed the ability to do so. You can go and do it exactly as you have. There was never really a requirement that negotiations be in person. It's just the way it's always been done, but there's no requirement that it had to be done. So it's not an Open Public Meetings Act issue. They can set up virtual. Some districts are just exchanging proposals by email and then following up with their committees. Some are virtually negotiating, but plenty are. The Public Employment Relations Commission is open virtually. That's the agency that assists with negotiation. They provide the fact finders and mediators if things need a little bit of extra help, but they are in full force. They're accepting all electronic filings. They are trying to get into the virtual world and start with hearings and things like that, but they are up and running and they are available to help everybody through the process. So there's really no reason not to go forward, except for some considerations and just 2 dates I want to have people aware of, districts aware of, because money is ultimately always the issue between salaries and healthcare. Based on an executive order as well as some legislation, the 2 dates that need to be calendared. It's also, again, May 22nd. That's going to be a big day. But that is the date by which the treasurer of New Jersey has to give a recommendation as to the state of the New Jersey budget and finances. And there's a bunch of different things he has to speak of, but essentially where we stand in the world as far as finances. Then by August 25th, the governor is going to have to give a revised budget address, which has not happened before that we know, in any kind of recent time. But that's going to be a big deal. If people are negotiating, they're going to need to know where they stand financially. And if they want to maybe work on some of the non-economic stuff first, and then ultimately, when they know where they stand financially, just wait, TBD, wait for those announcements to come out.
Yeah, I think a lot of things are to be determined. So it's moving really quickly. I definitely want to say and reiterate that we are monitoring the chat right now. So if you have a question or comment, just drop it in the comment section below. I'll forward it along to our attorneys. I want to give a shout out to Al Miller. He said, good morning. Good morning, Al, Steve from Boonton Town, Jacqueline. Good morning to you all. All right, so stipends. It's a big question out there. Should districts be paying out stipends to staff even if they haven't performed the work? So, for example, should districts be paying their spring sport coaches right now a stipend?
So I think this question is, again, one of those questions that has come up frequently in the past month or so. And I think the answer to this question is, I think districts want to be having a conversation with their board attorney. And just as by way of background, this has come up because both from an executive order and then also some legislation that was passed that was looking at the issue of which employees would still continue to be paid in school districts, and then which stipends and contracts should continue to be paid during this time of COVID-19. So I think it raises some interesting questions about contract issues, or the New Jersey Constitution would prohibit what's called a gift of public funds. And Kathleen can talk more about that if she as well. But I think we're really just saying with districts, to make sure you're having a conversation with your board attorney if this is something that's you're confronting in your district.
Yeah,
Right.
Kathleen.
I'll just chime in quickly. Yeah, it's going to come down to language and collective bargaining agreements. Every district's going to have things written a little differently, and I think it's really going to come down, as Katrina said, to the court system, because we have this conflict. You cannot, under the New Jersey Constitution, you cannot use taxpayer money for things that are considered a gift. In other words, for things that you receive, the government received no back and forth, no consideration, they call it. So that. You have that on one end, but then you also have the fight of, well, I entered into a contract. It's not my fault. Spring sports were canceled. I should still get my money. So I think it's going to be a really, really interesting legal issue that is probably going to have to go through the courts and go all the way up, New Jersey Supreme Court wise.
Yeah. So we have a question actually to the stipends. Michelle says, should districts be paying stipends that are PTO funded honoraria? Did I say that correctly? I think so. Honoraria, PTO funded. I'm not really sure, Michelle.
Yeah, I think that's another one that I think that sounds very like context specific, and I think they might want to have a conversation. That district may want to talk to their board attorney about. It sounds like there might be some circumstances influencing what the outcome in that situation might be.
Yeah. And then Jacqueline says, do you think districts will need to reduce and revive budgets based on our current situation?
Kathleen, do you want to go ahead?
That's okay. I think you have to really be mindful that we are in unprecedented times, that there is a lot of uncertainty. There is a lot of money being expended in other ways. And everything's going to have to get paid for somehow. But I think you need to wait for that Treasury report in May, and then the governor's revised budget address. But be prepared for, hope for the best, prepare for the worst.
Yeah.
I think that's one of those big question marks that's kind of in everyone's head right now.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So have there been changes to employee leave laws in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and what resources are available to board members about this topic?
Sure. So just to give a brief overview and not without going into too much detail, there's been changes both on the federal and state levels to employee leave laws. You may have heard about the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, also called FCRA. So that does cover covered employers under that law, include school districts. So under FCRA, that provides for emergency leave, so 2 weeks of paid sick leave up to 80 hours. The rate at which an employee needs to be paid if they're taking that emergency sick leave depends on if it's being taken because the employee themselves is quarantined or has symptoms and is seeking a medical diagnosis, or alternatively, if they're caring for a child or a quarantined individual under specific conditions under that law. There's different rates of pay depending upon the situation. That FCRA also provides for an extension of the Family Medical Leave Act leave. So it also provides an additional 10 weeks of paid expanded family medical leave. That's at 2/3 rate of regular pay up to a specific cap under the law. That includes to care for a child, that's been somehow impacted under COVID-19. Again, under the statute is very specific about the situation that applies. Something else I would just mention is that there have been changes to the earned sick leave law, and as well as the New Jersey Family Leave Act, to address reasons that leave may need to be taken for a COVID-19 purpose. The New Jersey Department of Labor has published some FAQs and I would say a very helpful chart on what types of leave apply. So again, that's a piece of why I don't want to go into too much detail on this, because I think it is very specific, which leave an employee qualifies for can be very specific to the situation. I think that chart and some other resources that the New Jersey Department of Labor has published are a great resource for districts. And I would also say the Federal Department of Labor has also published information as well. It's available online to districts. And just to give a quick shout out, the Commissioner of the Department of Labor and Workforce Development recently came to one of our NJSBA meetings to talk about some of these leave changes, and I think provided some great and very helpful information to our members.
Kathleen, do you have anything to add?
Just I do. We're not getting paid to pump up the Department of Labor, but they have performed what I think are Herculean tasks with what they have been given. They have been working right through this pandemic from all levels, and that website is just, I think it's really tremendous. They are working on it every day. I think sometimes they're getting some bad press about certain things not working, but I think what they have done is so helpful. And those items that Katrina talked about are really, really useful. And people need to just take some time. I know it's a very emotional time. There's a lot of, panic and as completely understandable, but that website can really put a lot of people at ease if they just take the time to read it.
Absolutely. We have another question from the chat. Will districts need liability clauses added to protect them from lawsuits regarding COVID impact and the outbreak since once they open back up?
So this is another thing I think to talk about with your board attorney as well. Without getting too much into the weeds on this, it's something that I think has received a lot of dialogue in the legal community, or whether some contracts will have what's called a force majeure clause. So basically providing some protections or not providing protections for what's kind of like an act of God. So whether this qualifies as one of those acts, I think that's a big question mark. So I think it's possible that there may be something in your contract, but there may not be. So I think it's really contract specific. I would say talk to your board attorney to kind of weed through some of those issues.
Okay. So what about,
if you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that's great. Yep.
Yeah. So what information is out there regarding the unemployment process for furloughed district employees?
Okay, I just want to first I want to distinguish that term furloughed, because it's being thrown around a lot right now, and it's essentially a term of art. It means a specific thing. We talk about furlough now as just meaning kind of a general layoff, and that was just something generally, if all the other parts are in place, that would qualify a person for unemployment at this time. Additionally, there's a proposed plan. It's not even legislation yet, but a proposed plan coming from Senator Sweeney's office that is looking at the possibility of actually furloughing certain groups of people, primarily public workers. So that's kind of more of a very specific group of people. So I wasn't going to get into that right now, but you may hear that term again. But the furlough, if you essentially have been laid off, go again to that website, the DOL website. If you put in DOL WD, because it's Department of Labor Workforce Development, and then just put in UI for unemployment insurance, it will take you right to their website, and they literally take you step by step. You answer a series of questions and it will tell you kind of what to apply for. It's really great. They tell you how to answer questions based on your situation. And then they have recently set up a portal, because there was a communication issue just because they were not equipped to answer the phones for all of the tens of thousands of people that are now applying. But they have a portal now where you can actually email and get a person to respond to you within a certain amount of time. And they will answer your questions about the status of your unemployment process, questions about, did I answer this right? Did I answer this wrong? So you're not just hanging out there in the universe. But that website, if you go right to the UI, it'll take you right to the unemployment insurance area.
Great.
Yeah, and I would also just add that I think the FAQs are a great resource for districts. Again, as Kathleen said, we're not being paid to pump up the department, but I mean, I think one of the questions that's addressed in those FAQs is the issue about substitute teachers who, may do whether they qualify for unemployment, and they may qualify for unemployment depending on, of course, their situation. And I think board members may have heard some things about the CARES Act funding providing additional additional benefits to folks who are receiving unemployment. And I think all those questions, there's resources available on that website that Kathleen mentioned addressing those issues.
Yeah. So Steve has a question. If the state mandates that employees wear PPE like face coverings, gloves, what laws are in place that would require an employer to provide them that require an employer to pay for them or reimburse employees? And what about students?
So one thing I would say right now, as these questions are coming in about how should individual districts be addressing issues like face coverings in districts, et cetera, we really would encourage districts to be having conversations with their local Department of Health. That could be your municipality, that could be your county. I think they're also going to have some guidelines and some information about how districts should be responding to issues like that. Because I think some of it is also going to be very much dependent on the situation in your area as well.
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes into our next question. Do districts have to accommodate employees who don't have COVID-19 and are not provided related care, but are afraid to come into work?
So I think one question to be looking at in a situation like that would be if the employee has any accrued leave that could apply in that situation that they could take for that reason. Something else the district should be thinking about is whether does an employee have any underlying, is there a disability, is there a manifestation of an employee's disability at issue here? Because of course, if that's the case, that the district may need to go through an interactive process with that employee. And of course, that may not apply in all cases, but that's something certainly to be thinking about as well.
Yeah, Kathleen?
And also something to be mindful of. The governor has said this on many occasions, and it was in one of his executive orders, that you need to be very, very careful about any type of activity that looks like retaliation against someone that either is perceived to have it, thinks they might have it, is worried about it. You have to be really protective of that. You are allowed to ask for documentation and things like that. Districts are not, prohibited from any of that. But the Division on Civil Rights, the New Jersey Division on Civil Rights, has actually added this to their group of class of reasons of protected classes that you cannot discriminate against someone. So that ultimately could be a group of cases that we start to see going through the Division of Civil Rights. But it's a real fine line. But the governor has been very, very clear, and through his Division on Civil Rights, that no retaliation will be tolerated. So have the conversations. Doesn't mean you have to do everything. An accommodation doesn't mean you have to do everything under the sun, but you have to have the conversation and you have to put forth good faith efforts.
Yeah, so Jacqueline has a question. If we go back to school in September and face masks are required and the parents and students don't feel confident sending students back into the classroom, how should districts handle that?
I think we're going to have a little more information because the district is also going to have an opening plan that's going to be due to districts or it's going to be due to the state over the summer. They're going to have all of these items set forth exactly how they're going to work. It's going to be a lot of conversations. There's going to be a lot of financial discussions that are going to happen. Money, all these things cost money, and money's going to be the issue, but the safety is ultimately has to be the issue. But there is going to be a plan, and I think people will know more information once the district starts submitting these plans that are very specific on all the different topics that they have to deal with, especially, and safety is as number one, right? There's curriculum and then there's safety. So I think that information is TBD, but definitely on the top of the minds of everyone we've spoken with.
Yeah, Katrina, do you have anything to add?
No, I think Kathleen really hit the nail on the head there.
All right, so Steve has a question about earned sick leave. If a full-time employee already earns paid sick time under the statute for a salary job, does he or she earn additional sick leave for working an hourly job at the same employer, like an after-school program?
This was a big question when that paid sick leave law first came on. There wasn't a lot of guidance that came out, and Katrina can speak if there's anything else that she knows. That was not the intention ultimately of that leave act. It was to make sure that people have that people at work have the right to those 40 hours a year to take care of things so that they can do things for their family and, go to a meeting for their child, those sorts of things. So essentially that no one goes without some degree of sick time. To then, if you already have PTO time at your day job, if you're working for that same employer, in a different capacity, that was not really the intention, but I think it's still a gray area.
Yeah, I agree. And I just would kind of pull out something Kathleen said for the same employer, because there certainly could be situations in districts where maybe there's an after school provider that's a third party that, of course, I think the answer to this question really is, again, I feel like I've been sounding like a broken record, but it could be very situation dependent. So if there's a question about accrued sick leave, that this may be something to also talk about with the board attorney as well.
Yeah, so Joyce has a question. If you work a summer camp or summer jobs that are not there this year, can they apply for unemployment? I'm guessing at a district of some sort, like an after-school program or summer camp at a school. Can they apply for unemployment?
The guidance that the commissioner gave us had to do, because there have been provisions for people that aren't just salaried people that get laid off or have their hours reduced, that there are what they call gig opportunities, that there's money being paid for that. The idea behind that, it would have to be something essentially that they already have a right to, like a job that they already have agreed to or have some sort of agreement that they're going to have, not just, oh, I was thinking about working at this summer camp and now I can't. The advice was always apply and let them make their answer. And if they ultimately they have to apply for the regular unemployment before they might be able to, they have to get denied and then apply for that special unemployment insurance. So it sounds a little counterintuitive, but it's part of the process. But the advice was take a shot, be honest, be straightforward about all of your answers, but let them make the decision. Don't knock yourself out of the running by thinking it too much.
Yeah, Katrina, do you have anything to add?
No, but again, from what I understand, whether someone can qualify for unemployment, again, is very specific to them as an individual. So I just want to make sure that, I think Kathleen's giving some great information, but certainly that's a determination to be made by the Department of Labor.
Yeah. So what other resources are available to NJSBA members about all of these topics we talked about today?
So one thing I just wanted to jump in before we get to that question, because earlier we talked about that issue about non-renewals, and I was throwing out so many dates. I just want to reemphasize 2 dates to make sure they, that they're all on the same page about what those are. So in those April election districts, the extended deadlines that I mentioned earlier were June 5th and then June 22nd. The former being for the offer of contract, or that a contract won't be offered, or then the second deadline being about accepting that offer. So in terms of other resources, certainly if you haven't already been to our webpage, NJSBA has a portal called our COVID-19 Resource Center, where we're posting our latest legal developments and guidance for districts, as well as many other resources as well. Something I also just want to emphasize is that the legal department is still offering our attorney of the day service. So if you are thinking about some of the topics that we've mentioned during this broadcast, and you think later, well, wait a minute, there's something I wish I'd asked, you can certainly reach out to us through the attorney of the day service for board members and administrators, and of course board attorneys. That number is 609-278-5254. And we'll certainly get back to you regarding your question if you leave us a message.
Great. Kathleen, do you have anything to add?
Right, just that we are virtually open for business. We can also be emailed. Again, we can't give legal advice, but we can certainly give information, which we are happy to do. And we are, working on our programs. We have some programs that are also on the website. So legal is still, and labor relations is still up and running, and we're working virtually, and we're getting used to things, but we're here.
Absolutely, we are here. As we wrap up the broadcast, first off, I want to thank Kathleen and Katrina for joining us today. A ton of great information. I want to reiterate that we will be monitoring the comment section after this broadcast. So if you're watching this right now and have a question that may pop up later in the day, just drop it in the comment section below. And if you're watching this on a recorded broadcast, yeah, same thing. Drop it in the comment section below, and I'll forward it over to our attorneys. Again, I want to thank you, Katrina and Kathleen. It was wonderful. I want to thank everyone for joining us today live. And I want to let everyone know that future Facebook Live events will be announced on ngsba.org through School Board Notes and through our Facebook page. So if you haven't already, you're already here, just click that like button. It really helps our page and content grow. And just follow us. For the latest information, bookmark www.ngsba.org/COVID-19. And I'll put that landing page into the comments below. That's our resource page, everything COVID-19 coronavirus. It's updated daily. It's an incredible resource page. Our entire association works on and updates it daily. So for more information about NGSBA Facebook Live events, just follow us right here on Facebook. So thank you so much. I hope everyone has a great day and stay healthy.
Thanks so much, Mike.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mike.